With Anniversary Realms 9 weeks into AQ40, and most phases lasting anywhere between 14 and 16 weeks, Naxxramas is not too far away, bringing us ever closer to the date where we return back into the Burning Crusade, where the meta completely shifts and we enter an entirely new world of raiding. Today I want to cover what I think will be the top 5 most in-demand classes for the Burning Crusade. This time around, we have a lot more knowledge going into the Burning Crusade from the previous iteration on how realistically each class is going to perform from tier 4 all the way into the Sunwell. And a big thing to keep in mind, we're going to be going into these raids with dual specialization and the buff and debuff limit being completely removed. Without a doubt, this will open up a ton of possibilities for any hybrid class. This will surely shape the meta to be a little bit different this time around compared to the previous iteration of TBC. So with that being said, let's jump right into the video. Starting things off, we got to talk about the obvious. We have a bunch of players currently playing their Fury Warriors and their Rogues, and they're going to likely want to continue playing those going into the Burning Crusade. And so for that reason, they're naturally going to be lower in demand. Especially the Warrior, seeing how well Fury was performing as early as tier 4. And you also have the option to play Kebab Spec, which is just dual wield arms. On average, this will do more DPS than your traditional two-handed build, and it brings the much needed 4% physical damage buff from Blood Frenzy. This allows you to pick up one-handers early on to try and convince your raid leader that you can go Fury. Number 5 is going to be the Druid. With all 3 specializations bringing something valuable to the raid, you're always going to want to have one Balance, one Feral, and one Resto Druid. With Fairy Fire, Mangle, Insect Swarm, Mark of the Wild, Leader of the Pack, and having multiple innervates and battle reses will always be great for progression. Druids are an easy pick, making the top 5. Feral Druids being the premier main tank for this expansion, and you're always going to bring a Balanced Druid for that 3% hit from improved Fairy Fire, as well as that 5% crit from the Moonkin Aura to buff up your Warlocks. And of course your Resto Druid, being able to Life Bloom the entire raid, provides some much needed AoE healing. Number 4 on my list is going to be the Hunter. Specifically, the BM Hunter is going to be one of the most stackable classes throughout the entirety of TBC. This, in my opinion, is the Fury Warrior of the Burning Crusade. They will do the most single target on pretty much every single boss encounter. You're always going to bring one survival for exposed weakness, making it a pretty much guaranteed raid spot. As for the BM Hunter, you're going to bring the Ferocious Inspiration buff to your party members, increasing all damage by 3% every time your pet scores a critical hit. On top of that, both Hunter specs bring much needed utility, Scorpion Sting for harder hitting bosses, and Misdirection to give your tanks a little bit more threat on their openers. The one downside to Hunters is they do lack on AoE encounters, but this next pick definitely does not, and that is none other than the Warlock. Any guild looking to speedrun or clear their raids quickly will stack Warlocks more than any other class in the game. They provide excellent utility with curses and soulstones, and with dual spec, Warlocks can make a separate spec and item build just for maximizing their Seed of Corruption damage. Now you're probably wondering, what about mages? Arcane mages are very competitive, sometimes they will even beat Warlocks on single target and AoE fights up until Black Temple. The downside is they aren't as stackable as Warlocks since they need a Shadow Priest in the mages group in order for them to truly perform. Number 2 is going to be the Paladin. Pretty easy pick here again, you're going to always need 3 of them to cover all the Paladin buffs, and of course all of the auras as well. The Prot Pally is going to be the go-to tank for any AoE encounter, not to mention they are the best tanks for heroics. Holy Pallies have some of the strongest single target heals in the game, and they can also do some pretty solid AoE damage if they stack a bunch of spell power. As for Ret Paladins, they do really solid damage throughout the entirety of the game, one of the most fun physical classes to play because of seal twisting, and you're always going to bring one for improved Seal of the Crusader and Sanctity Aura. And it's worth mentioning, when you get into Sunwell, you can sometimes drop your Holy Pally and let them go Ret Paladin, so you can have 2 Ret Pallies, 1 Prot, so that way you can still have the 3 buffs. The Ret Pally is a very popular spec to be playing, and will likely be in less demand than the other 2. However, the Paladin will always be in demand with strong utility such as Blessing of Protection and Blessing of Freedom. And for my number 1 pick, it's going to be the Shaman. All 3 specs are super desired to have inside of your raid. You'll often bring 2 Enhancement, 2 Resto, and 1 Ellie. The main reason you'll always bring at least 5 is because of Bloodlust and Heroism. This buff is party-wide, so you'll always need 1 Shaman per group. Resto Shamans also provide great utility with Mana Tide and Earth Shield. Ellie Shamans bring Totem of Wrath to help buff up your Warlocks. And of course, your Enhanced Shamans bring Unleashed Wrath to buff up that melee group even farther. Not to mention all of the different totems which will provide numerous amounts of utility to the raid. This could be very different if Bloodlust and Totems get moved to being raid-wide buffs rather than party-wide. In that situation, you will likely still bring 1 LE, 1 enhancement, and 1 resto. We'll have to wait and see if Blizzard does change any of these things later down the line as we get closer to TBC. And that pretty much wraps up this video. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe for more TBC content in the future, and be sure to let me know what you think the most in-demand class will be for the Burning Crusade. And as always, I will see you in the next one.